Hi, welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna talk about Ansible and automation of infrastructure servers, and I will walk you through an article I write about Ansible, which is a detailed information about it to get started with this powerful tool. But I will be more quickly and show you some show you how to proceed with the installation and how to proceed with some playbooks and commands with Ansible, so you can get started visually if you want. So uh, the objectives of this Ansible introduction is to introduce Ansible automation software and its core concepts, and to present Ansible Playbook, which is the core component for reusable commands and instructions for installation of servers and to manipulate servers in your Linux. Uh, we don't talk about the recommendation playbook layout, which is the core Ansible team recommends, so you can reuse playbooks and playing with the commands in a more structured way. Uh, First, we get a roadmap here. We will talk about installation. I'm using the I'm using here w, WSL in Windows installation, so we could have a CLI tool of Linux in the Windows environment with a good integration with Windows. I love WSL as a project for Microsoft. It makes it really easy to use Linux in Windows environment. My default uh, Linux distribution is Arch Linux, but when you install WSL, you have Ubuntu installed. When you talk about installation of Ansible in Ubuntu, pay attention to one thing. If you try to install Ansible, it will install a old tool. It already installed. Uh, it will install Ansible 2.9, which is an old version of Ansible. So the recommend process to install in the Ubuntu is to using the Python version, the pip installer, the package menus of Python to install the Ansible tool in your Linux environment using Ubuntu. So you can check if you have pip installed with this command, trade and model pip version. So we do have pip installed. If you don't have, you can install with using package manage, using sudo apt install python 3 pip, and you will install the Ansible package in the user environment, so you don't have to use root to run this installation command. But you have to export your path to a local bin path, because when you do install Python, anytime type install Ansible using the user flag, it's already installed, but it will install in the local bin on the user directory. Here is Ansible installed. So you have to export your path to this local bin. You can use that in your bash. You can put that in your bash. I use a Z shell here, so I have it's the same command, so but different file. So you export your path here. Make sure you put your path again in the export command because you don't have to override your path information. You want to add a location to your path, but uh, if you are a Linux user, you must know that. So with Ansible installed, you can check the version. And the latest version is 2.13, not 2.9. Uh, with Arch Linux, it's much simpler because the Pacman already have the most up-to-date Ansible installation, so you just do a Pacman installation process. I'm gonna use Arch Linux for now, but the commands and the things we do are the same. So in order to upgrade, you could use Python and pip install dash upgrade for upgrade the package. And with Arch Linux, you just upgrade the package with the package manager. Now, covering the installation, let's talk about Ansible concepts. First concept I want to talk is the Ansible Inventory. What is an inventory? An inventory is, in a short term, it's the place where we put information about the house we're gonna connect to in the Ansible to Ansible do its management. So I have a project here. Gonna get okay, I have a Ansible inventory here, and I show you what is an inventory. Well, the inventory is a file when you put your host machines in here. For instance, I have a host called VM01, and the user for connecting to this host is Vagrant because I'm using the Vagrant tool to create this virtual machine, and the IP address of this virtual machine is this IP address. So Ansible can use this file to connect to this host, and we can group these hosts using groups. For instance, I create a virtual machine group, and inside this virtual machine groups, I create the host. If you don't want a group, then you can put in the all group, and the machines will not have a group, so you have to, in the Ansible commands, to add all to run in all machines. I also have a web servers group when I put the VM01, VM01 and VM02 in this host. Note that I don't need to re-add the user and the host to this configuration because Ansible is smart enough to know it. I also have a database group when I put VM2 in this group. So we can, in the Ansible Playbooks and the Ansible Commands, and limit the configuration to these groups of servers. There is also a lot of ways to do that because we can use regex to put all VMs which start with VM slash 0 something, and we get all the VMs from 01 to 09, and we have other ways to do that. We may talk about it in the article. So building the inventory, we could have an inventory which is a file like this one I mentioned, and we could have a file which is a YAML file, and we could have an inventory which is a init file. In the init file, you have a little bit of less customization, but it's the same. You can in this example here, in using a init file, you can put your hosts in the file by etc ansible hosts. There's no such file here, but this is a global file. So in each project you have these hosts, you can reference them. One thing you can do is to list the hosts we have. If you're using the global file, we have 0 hosts. If you're using an inventory file, we see that we have VM01 and 203 hosts. One thing we can do with the host is to check if the connection with the hosts are okay. Ansible, we use SSH to connect to every single host, so you must have SSH server running in the host machine, and you will have to have Python installed, which most distributions bring by default SSH in the server and Python installed and updated. Ansible will require a Python 3, I think, for the last version of Ansible. We have these hosts here. I wanna will bring them up. I'm using Hyper-V to create these machines. I have VM 01, 02, 03. I'm bringing them up now. Let's do different, actually, because I have already provisioned these machines. We'll start with a new machine instead. Instead of bringing them up, I will destroy them and recreate them. So all the machines are gone now. Bring them up again, and I'm gonna cut the video because it will take some time to recreate the machines. And we will have a little problem because the SSH key for these machines will just be updated, and the when we try when we try to connect to these machines using SSH, it will not work, and because there's a security measure where it checks the keys for the servers, and we're gonna it's very easy to correct that. I'm gonna cut the video. All right. Now we do have we 3 VMs running and ready to connect. Now, as I mentioned, we will have a problem because I recreated the machines in a clean state. The private key will change, and when we try to SSH one of the machines, it will not work. There is a problem with WSL because we do not have access to the machines by default. I tried to do that persistent in my machine, but I have no luck so far. So I have to change that because the virtual machine is running in a different vSwitch, which is like putting a port of Ethernet in your machine. The machines don't have access to it because by default Windows do not allow package forward between the Ethernet. So we need to change that. It's just one command, but I have this command here. But I'll put that in the description, but don't pay attention to that. We need access between the machines. If you're trying this in another hypervision, another virtualization tool like VMware, you may not have this problem. And if you're trying in the cloud with some machines, you definitely don't have this problem. Okay, now we can connect to the machines, and as I mentioned, in the no host, we do have these hosts here, which are 10.4. I will remove 10.4, 10.5, 10.6. Okay. Now we can connect. I will show you trust the key, and we can connect. Since we can connect to the machines through your private key, now we can use Ansible to do that. One thing to mention is because for each command, remember that when we try to connect to the machine, it ask us if we trust the private key. And this will cut the flow of Ansible because we try to connect, and in the first connection we have to interact with Ansible, and Ansible is not made it to interactions and to respond to things in the host. So we need a way to ignore or to accept by default each one connections in the first connection try. For do that, we have to add a line to Ansible. We add this line as a SSH args connection, so we are accepting new hosts by default, and this will not interfere with the flow of Ansible. And the file is etc ansible.cfg. Now, with this in place, we can check if we have connection with the hosts, and I forgot to mention what are the hosts. I like to do that as the first argument. Okay, we do connect to all your hosts, and Ansible discover a Python interpreter, which is Python 3, and so it's okay to run commands on these virtual machines. Now, we talk about the Ansible inventory. Let's see what we can talk about more. Have the connection. Okay, one of the things I mentioned is because we can select the machines we want to connect to your commands. One of the ways is to mention a group. I mentioned that we have a virtual machines group, virtual machines. So it will run this command in all machines of the group. I can select web servers and we run only in two of these machines. So it does VM1, VM2, and there are some ways to select these targets. For instance, we can use the limit flag. So although I select all web servers, I limit that to only VM1. So that's one way to do it. For instance, you can use that if you are running in a group of servers, which is you don't want to rerun the same command in all of them. Let's see some of these things, these ways to select. Here, selecting targets. We can use multiple hosts in the target. For instance, if we want to select only VM01 and VM02 to run this command, I have to remove the limit because it will conflict. We can do that. We can use multiple groups of servers using the same syntax, We can exclude a group. For instance, we want all, but not the web servers, not the database. We will exclude the VM23. I think it's conflicting with it's conflicting. Okay. We need to escape that character. That's it. We run it all machines, excluding the database group. And we can lose the intersection, which is all groups, all machines that are in both groups. So it's intersection, and we can use and we can combine these abstractions for doing something more complex. We can also use a wildcard option. For instance, we need to use VM all. I think it's okay. We can use that. And you can mix wildcard partners with groups at the same time. There is some limitation to the patterns. For instance, you cannot target the Ansible hosts or the IP address of the Ansible if you put alias to the hosts. You cannot do that. You have to target the alias, in this case VM01. You can use regex in patterns, which is really powerful. For instance, our web host that starts with web or db and has example.com in the final. And we can use the limit as I mentioned. And we can use negative limits. It's very powerful, these ways to target us. We can limit group, limit. We can use the same syntax for the limit option. Okay, that's the way for targets. So we talk about the Ansible inventory. We will talk about ad hoc commands. Okay, let's talk about the syntax for ad hoc commands. So Ansible, I will talk about all within the inventory we just built, and the argument is -m is the modular we are trying to invoke for the command. Ansible has a lot of modulars. We will talk about in depth about these modulars in the next section. We talk about modulars and collections, but to get started, we invoking the shell module, which is a way to run commands inside the targets, and we passing parameter to the shell module with that /a, and we are running a command. For instance, we can run ls root, and in all system it will run this command. Okay, we have the return of VM3. VM2 is the same return, and VM1. Where is the VM1? VM1. Okay. So this is a way so you can, for instance, update all the system and check if a file is in the system. For instance, we can cat can run anything here. Pay attention that if the command you're running needs to interact with the shell, for instance, to ask you if you want to proceed for the installation of a package, for instance, it will not work because Ansible cannot stop and try to interact with you in the command. So the command has to run and exit without interruptions. For instance, if you want to update our package, we can run a sudo apt update, but we need to run with -yes for everything. So we do have 13T packages to upgrade, and we can first upgrade to all systems, all 3 systems, by running upgrade /sheet. Although I do not recommend that for installation of packages, because we do have a module for the installation of package which is also checks if the package is installed and will not do anything if it's already installed. We do have a module for that, which is apt for Ubuntu servers and Debian servers, and yarm for ReadyRat, CentOS, and so this command will take some time. Let's talk about some examples we have here. We have a become a parameter for the Ansible. What this does is, instead of running sudo here, it will run the command or the module as sudo. For instance, if you want to run a module which replace a file, and we do want to make sure that the user has access to the file, we can use the become parameter to do that. Okay, it's still running. Cat is updating the Linux kernel. If you put x become in the parameter, it will ask you the password for the sudo command. So it's really convenient if you do that. Use other modules. All modules of Ansible can be used in the ad hoc way. For instance, if we want to install a package, we can use the building apt to install the HTTP package in the system. Or we can use the copy command to copy a file to the destination of the system, or we can use the file command to change permissions of the file using the mod parameter. Well, let's try that. I'll run this only in the VM01, and I use the Ansible building file, and I will check the destination of the file to be zo.conf, and I will make sure the mode of the file is 00600. Let's run system there. Okay, that's it. I need to change the original file, not the symlink. Now, pay attention that if we run the file again, the same command again, Ansible will not change the file and will not do anything, because Ansible is smart enough to do a diff between the state, which are the state you are asking for, and the state that the machine has. So it will make no difference to run the same command more than once. So let's check the I not want to let's check the VM2 and change to the default file system, which is 6 I think 4 yeah. Check again. Okay. Now we can do more things with the modulus. For instance, we can use the service module By the way, we have two options here. We can use the unqualified name of the module, which is not recommended, or we can use the full name of the model, which is very common because it will not collide with other names you could install in your machine. So for all building Ansible commands, this is the model, the full model. So we will check if the name of the model is apache2, which is not installed, state equal stop it. Okay, let's check that. It's not installed, so it will fail the command because could not find the service. Let's check one service that is running. And I don't know which servers Linux uses by default. Let's check that. Boom, 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 boom. SSH, it's a good one. Let's do I started because I don't want to lose the access to the machine, but I will check if the state of SSH server is started. Ansible would do nothing because it's already started, but if it's not started, it will start the servers. Okay, we can stop, we can restart. Now we talk about Hoc Commands. Let's talk about playbooks and tasks, where we can run commands in Hoc, but it's not so fun, right? Because we need a way to express a complex task in its main tasks and run it many times and share with others. That's where playbooks come in. Playbook is a collection of tasks that we can run. For instance, I have an example here. A playbook is composed of tasks they can rerun, and variables we can use to make sure that we can change these variables and run in different environments, or we can just change these variables and update files and systems and other commands. And we can have other things like handles, we should talk about later. But let's talk about the syntax for a playbook. A playbook, it has, as I mentioned, a name for a group of things you can do. This group is update web servers, and we'll select some servers from the inventory, which is the web servers group. We need to run all commands on this playbook as root, so we are using the become true flag here, and we are configuring the playbook with the config folder for the apache2, and what vhost we want to install. And we also pass in a custom variable called proxy timeout, which will use as an example for configuration of file. So we do have new tasks here, and each task has a name and a module. In this task, for instance, we are installing the latest Apache version. And if we use this state, we can use the state present or the state latest. The latest will try to update the Apache server each time you run the command, so it's not recommended to use in your playbooks, but I'm using here because I want to make sure that the Apache 2 is updated. So I change to latest. It will use the apt for installing services package. We also have yum, the package maintenance here, building in Ansible. The second thing you're gonna do after installing Apache, so the order that this playbook executes is from top to bottom, and it's synchronous because it executes one task after another, but you can change that behavior if you want. You can use it as synchronous and run multiple tasks at the same time, but by default it's synchronous, and it will create a HTML directory for the site, and it will use the file model. The destination for the file is vhost and vhost domain, which is example.local here. Public HTML, and state of this file is a directory, so it will create this directory if not exist. It will create site index, which we use a template, so we're using a different model here, which is the template model. And we'll add an index.html file in this directory using the template. The template, it's just simple, just a welcome page. We can use variables here using the syntax, using the vhost domain here. So Ansible will parse this file and change this variable to use. We can use other things here like for loops and if statements. Just check this is a Jinja syntax. Just check Jinja syntax. Just check the syntax and you are good to go. Jinja syntax. Here in Jinja documentation. Use expression, loop controls, and I don't know if everything we can use in Jinja we can use in Ansible, but most parts we can do. For instance, loop controls, use it break, and I don't want loop controls, I want filters, tests. For instance, if you use a if syntax to write something in the file. Now, the next thing you're gonna do is to configure a virtual host site. and we will get the vhost template. We're using variables here to configure the vhost, and we'll add this vhost to the sites available of the Apache server, and using a handler here. So when this changes, if this template file is changed, it will notify the restart Apache handler. That the handler, it's a asynchronous task which we execute only if notified. So we have the next thing we're gonna do is we disable the default vhost, which conflicts with the others vhosts. We're using a command to do that, which is the same as shell, same as modulo shell. We are deciding the default site, and we are passing an argument to the command here. We are telling the command that it will remove a file. What this means is that if this file is already removed, the command will not execute it. We can use the arguments, for instance, to create a file. So if this command creates a file, if the file already exists, the command will not execute. So this makes sure that the command it's idempotent in the way that it's not executed every time. It will also notify the restart Apache. So if any of these commands change the states, Apache will be restarted. And here we have an example of creators. We will enable a vhost in the Apache domain. So we are building a command here. We can use arguments, variables here. So we enable the site vhost domain, and it will create in the sites enable the vhost conf file. It will also restart Apache. Last thing, we ensure the Apache is restarted. So Apache is started, and this is the handler that will be notified if some of these tasks change. The name of the handler is restart Apache, and we can use any module here to execute anything. The handler we execute is service module, and we make sure that the Apache 2 servers is restarted. Okay, this is a playbook. There is a second playbook here. As an example, we updated the DB servers. This is not a good name, but you can use that installed postgresql servers. But we are targeting different hosts here. So the database hosts, if you check your inventory, we have a database group here. That's the VM3. It will also execute as a root. And the tasks, it's installing PostgreSQL as a latest task, and just make sure that the servers is started. So we can go crazy here. We can create a lot of things. We can target multiple servers. This is an example for a typical web project in PHP, for example. If you have web servers running in connecting to a database, you can install all the servers and make sure that your project in PHP it's up to date. We have modules in Ansible to manage PostgreSQL and MySQL, so we can create users, we can create databases, and we can make sure that everything is ready for your application to run. in just one command, which which will you can use just one command and brings everything up. So that's a playbook. How do you run a playbook? Oh, it's really simple. We use the Ansible playbook command, and we pass a inventory, and we pass the playbook we want to run. And it will execute everything that I just mentioned here. Let's try that. First, let's check, and we need a way to check this. So the machine in your inventory that will be the web service VM1, which has the 10.4, and VM2. Let's check if we have Apache installed. We don't have a connection, and in order to simulate a site connection, I need to create a host here. So the name of your site is example.local. So we do have DNS, fake DNS hosts here, so we can check. We don't have a connection. Now we run the playbook. First task is the Apache installation. It already changed, it's already installed. Creates the directory. It's really fast, so much more faster than if you were doing this by yourself. Okay, it's already finished. Let's check the example.local. Okay, we have a welcome page here. Get started. We can run the command again, and it will not have an effect on the system because everything is already in place. So the one of the one characteristic of Ansible that's really good is this independent nature of almost the majority of the modules do not redo what we ask for because it knows that the state is the same. So we can use that to make sure that if we run again the same playbook, it will only change what needs to. Okay, we talk about playbooks and tasks. Let's talk more about the collections and the modules which we do have. Um, we already talked about modules, which are the building modules, but we have a really good and really good couple of collections. Um, a collection could be a group of playbooks, could be a group of tasks and handlers, and it could import all the tasks or the collections in the same space. It could, for instance, reuse a collection. You can create a collection of, for instance, configuring Docker in each server, and you can reuse this collection in other playbooks using the import keyword. There's a lot you can do with collection. I recommend you check the documentation for the collections. Collection is a new way of Ansible to introduce some organization to the sharing of playbooks and modules and creation of extensions in the Ansible format. In the last versions of Ansible, this was not everyone does in your own way, and so now they are standardizing this way of sharing collections, sharing modules. Well, we do have some amazing collections here. For instance, we have the Amazon AWS, which manage resources, and we have the community AWS, which do the same. For Amazon, for instance, you can create virtual machines, create private networks, and so on. We have the building, which we use in almost only the building. We use only the building modules here, collection here. We have Ansible POSIX, which we can add as SSL authorized case, synchronize file with rsync, and more. We have the Azure collection, which do the same for Azure Cloud. Have the community Azure, DigitalOcean to manage DigitalOcean resource, community DNS to manage DNS on some pre-configured providers, where I have the ability to work with Docker to manage Docker containers. You have tools to work with FreePR, Java, Java KStorm, and others. We have managed cloud, Google Cloud servers. I recommend use the Google Cloud. It's more complete. We have collections to manage MySQL and PostgresQL. We have collections used with RabbitMQ, VMware, Kubernetes to manage some core functionalities of Kubernetes, and many more. And you can install more collections using the Ansible Galaxy repository. We can, for instance, this is community driven, so we use with care, but we do have a lot of other collections here to work with infrastructure and networking and many more. Databases, web servers, monitoring, for instance, Whole is collection different purpose, AWS, any jinx, work with any jinx proxy. So this is Ansible collections, modulars and collections. I talk about hooks here, but it's handlers. We already talk about handlers. Handlers is a way so you can do restart servers or do one-time configuration only if something changes in your playbook. That's what handlers do. Let's now talk about holes and the recommended layout for playbooks. For this, we're gonna check out okay. The recommended way so you can structure your playbooks, it's that you, instead of using one big file for the playbook, you separate your playbooks into rows in the rows directory, and for each directory you create a new one with everything you need to do that playbook. And you can even separate this playbook into handlers, tasks, templates, variables, default variables. For instance, remember the site playbook. Now in the web server rule, we do have a tasks, and we create a main file. Every directory has a main file, and we just put all the tasks here that will execute. So this is the task, and we create a templates file, template directory with all the templates we need. And for each handler, instead of creating the handler in the task, you can create the handlers here in the handlers directory. So it's the same playbook, will have the same effect, but it's more structured. And we could have the default variables here. The default variables, for instance, postgresql does have the tasks file. We should do two things, and we can navigate and see that it's a more structured way. The advantage of using the holes directory is because when you create the playbook, for instance, a playbook for the database, you can apply the whole and reuse everything. So Ansible will be smart enough to handle this directory convention using this convention and apply the things in the order they have to be applied. So this playbook for databases select all the database hosts and become root to run, and apply the PostgreSQL hole. You can apply multiple holes here. For instance, we could have a common rule which will make sure that some things like the host name it's the same, it's configured for the virtual machine, or some common packages are installed. So you could have a whole which will be reused between all the machines. For instance, I can apply the common whole to all the database and all the web servers. It's a best practice, so you separate your playbooks here. So if you want to run only the database playbook, you can using the Ansible playbook Ansible select the database inventory. Um, or you can run everything you want to all the infrastructure you have in this playbook. For this, we create a site.1 yum file. You can call this anything you want, but it's a convention to call it site. And in this site, we import all the playbooks. So we are importing the playbooks web servers, and we import the playbook database. So when you run the site.yum playbook, you run everything you import. Now we'll talk about inventories. That is a good way to separate your inventories here. For this inventory, I create two folders: an inventory folder and a local IPv and a production folder. This way I separate what my inventory is. So in the local IPv, I have the hosts, which are the same as the last inventory file. But I have a group vars. In the group vars, for each group that I want to update a variable, I create a file named the group. Web servers is the group I want to override. And in the web servers group, I changed the vhost domain to example.local and prox timeout to 60. So in the rule web server, we have variables here. So the default variable are the same, but when using the IPv local group, this will be overridden. You can check in the production group that my prox timeout is now 18 and my vhost domain is example prod.local. That means if you run the playbook passing the inventory local IPv, it will run with these groups variables. If we pass the production inventory, it will not only change the hosts, because I have different IP address for the hosts here, it will change the variables. This is very handy for playing with a playbook in the local environment or a cloud environment, which is for you to test your playbook. And then when everything is good, you just change the inventory and you run this in your production servers. You can have any number of inventories that you want. So that's it. Thank you for watching. You can check my article in my blog post, Get Started with Ansible, and you can check the documentation for Ansible for more information. That's a lot you can do with Ansible. The advantage of Ansible, because it's a simple way, you just need SSH and Python installed to get started with Ansible. You don't need agent installed in the machines, which have some disadvantages as well. But it's a good way to interact and to share your infrastructure automation. You can automate cloud environments, you can automate Kubernetes environments, you can automate not cloud environments, like more traditional virtual machines environments, doing everything after. So if you're doing this in the more traditional way, which is connecting to the servers and doing everything by hand, I highly recommend you to check out Ansible and stop doing that and start to doing your infrastructure as a code. It's very simple to get started, very easy to understand the syntax to the playbooks, and I really recommend it. So thanks for watching.